Hey guys, Deeble here. Today we're going to be taking a look at a build guide for Otto Ciliax, German Battleship Commander. Um, this build is designed as kind of a close to mid-range brawler with durability kind of being emphasized. Going into the German battleships prior to them being released, a lot of people were planning on Ciliax being their commander with von Hipper. They wanted to maximize the secondary range and effectiveness. I was initially a moderating voice, cautioning people to examine what they were giving up on that trade-off. I've pulled back even further. I think the secondaries are not worthless, but not to be focused on whatsoever in the build. Plenty of room for disagreement there. I fully acknowledge that. This is my opinion. You can see here, just taking a glance at this build, that I don't put any stock into the secondaries. There's no mods on any of my German battleships that focus on secondaries. I'm trying to maximize the functioning, the reload of the main guns, and the durability of the ship. So that's my goal with this build. Just keep that in mind. That's where I'm coming from. The German battleships in general are kind of close range brawlers. They're in general pretty well armored. I think the Tirpitz is going to be improved for sure. I believe next update, from what I gather, no word on yet on whether the Bismarck will be tinkered with in the future or not. Wouldn't surprise me if that ship gets some sort of buff to its durability at some point as well. The other ones, though, up and down the line, very hard to citadel, very durable ships. And that's just kind of the way they're meant to be played. Now, common aspects, good reload on these ships, pretty good turret traverse in general, pretty good maneuverability, low caliber guns, low damage guns comparatively to the other ships at the tier, and, you know, range. Accuracy is a major problem with these, especially at range. You can spec them out to increase your range if you want, but at long ranges, the guns aren't going to do much. So that's kind of what we're going with this build. Now, just to start off, Ciliax's base trait is very interesting. I've cautioned against the AP damage increasing perks in the past, but the battleship is the class that's the most useful for, just because in general you're going to be shooting mostly, if not all, AP during the rounds. So that does translate over as a good base trait for other inspirations potentially. And it is built into his build as the base trait. So I always like to imagine commanders having 3 available traits, but one of them you're forced to take. And whether that's any good or not is kind of up to the commander in general. So tier 1 perks: reduce damage con party reload here, reduce damage con party reload here, but increasing the risk of fire. This one to me is kind of counterintuitive because there's two things damage con is trying to deal with: fires and floods. So if you're really gung-ho on playing very close range, you find yourself getting torped a lot. Not a lot of problems with fires though, which tend to be a problem. I mean, in general, they're more of a problem at long range, but fires are always a present threat. Anyways, if you're finding yourself more flooded than on fire, then I guess you could consider this one. But to me, in my mind, that's kind of limiting the effectiveness of what you're trying to buff, which is getting that damage con cycled through quickly. So you could use this one. That's a fine perk. I do use Brawler, though. We're cutting down the reload time. You do get a boost to the torp visibility, which is also nice. Cuts down on the range. Again, we're not trying to use these battleships at max range. Early on in the match, yes, you're probably going to be firing from longer ranges just because it's usually ill-advised to rush forward too quickly. But your goal with these ships is to move forward, and the accuracy is very weak at long range, so we're not really worried about cutting down the range there. But the reload time is great. That's kind of what you want to be doing. Close range, pumping out damage. Perfect fit for this. And the torpedo visibility is a bit of a perk, or a bonus. Here's controversial right off the bat. I'm probably in the 1 or 2% of Otto Ciliax owners that doesn't have Porcupine on there. I understand it's a extremely minority position, but I don't care about the secondaries. I'm sorry. If they get buffed in the future, this might flip back. You know, the one of the main perks of the German battleships is they do have the best secondaries in the game at their tier. But what does that mean? Look at your results and get back to me. So I'm not too impressed with this one. I did use this up until within the last week. I switched it over to here, just improving the performance of the guns whatever way we can. Cutting down the turret traverse is going to help you get those shots off. There's two reasons that your guns should not be firing if you're within range of a target. Number one, they're reloading. Number two, they're turning. This is cutting down on the turn aspect. It's limiting your damage output, and it's going to help you out, especially in close range. Closer you are, that's the more important turret traverses on battleships, because you can actually sail past your targets in extremely close range battles. So anything you can do to boost the turret traverse, that's a good thing in my opinion. Number three, I don't really care about this one. I don't ever use this. Switching your shells. There's maybe one or two, there's for sure one, maybe two battleships that I shoot HE with in irregularity. And if you want to spec out the King George and use this perk on that one, maybe I could justify it. But this firefighter is great. Cutting down damage con, reload time, cutting down the risk of fire, and the negative is the cutting down of the damage control party duration. What that means is when you activate the perk, during the time it's active, i.e. when the icon is green, it's usually, I don't know, 5-10 seconds, whatever it is, then you can't get new fires or floods. So it reduces that kind of invulnerability period, but the main thing you're trying to do is keep that damage con cycling. So for me, this is a no-brainer. Firefighter is a good skill. Last one, this should be another no-brainer. Do we want to increase the maximum range of guns that can't hit anything at max range, or do we want extra heals? You can see I don't have it maxed. I get one extra heal. You max this thing up to level 16, legendary 4. You get 2 heals on this build, which is incredibly powerful. That's going to increase your staying power in the match dramatically, and you get your repair party reload time reduced, amount of HP recovered increased, and an extra heal. So Extreme Master Mechanic is one of the strongest perks for battleships, and it always needs to be considered whether, there's certain builds, and the Ciliax is one of them where, this is one of the main 2 highlights. For me, this build is coming down to Master Mechanic and Brawler. And then this one is up to you, dealer's choice. I'm going with this one currently, and then this one, this should be a no-brainer as well, but it's not crucial to the build. Here, running with scissors, cutting down the dispersion of increasing the dispersion of already inaccurate guns, to me is not something that I'm interested in. We are already trying to deal with the main guns' accuracy as best we can, and we'll talk about that when we look at the inspirations. But taking away from that is just not a good idea in my mind. So I never use running with scissors. I don't ever deliberately, I can't think of an instance at least where I deliberately cut down on the accuracy of my main guns. This one, on the other hand, perfectly fine. Increasing amount of HP per repair party, which is just a nice little bonus. So that's kind of a look at the core build. Now we'll go over some of the inspirations. So the 2 I use on my build are Cunningham and Madden. Cunningham, first and foremost, you can see I have a maxed quite high level. Cunningham is the only commander I currently have, or that I currently use on every single build up and down the battleship class. I think increasing the accuracy of your guns is extremely helpful, maximizes your damage output, and I'm not going to say I'll never change from that, but I find that the higher the level of Cunningham that I've had, the more I've enjoyed shooting with the battleship's guns, so very valuable. What Cunningham does, there's 2 different types of accuracy. There's dispersion, which is basically an oval around the ship that you're shooting at, or whatever you're shooting at, frankly, and the shots will land within that zone. Precision / accuracy is what Cunningham affects. That's how tightly grouped the shells are going to land together, so a perfectly accurate shot, all of the shells fired from that salvo would land in the exact same spot. Not possible in this game. but that's what that's affecting. So if you're aiming properly, the better the precision or your accuracy, then the more shells are going to likely land, really close to where you're aiming them. So very valuable for me. That helps mitigate one of the German battleship's main weaknesses, which is their accuracy. And even though it's not going to make you a sniper with these things, it does help out considerably. So if you want to do a very accurate German build, or as accurate as you can get them, then you're going to have to use von Hipper as your main commander. And we do have a build guide up on that. You can check the Commander Build Guide playlist if you haven't seen that one and you're interested. Next up, Madden. I just got him despite him being available since day one release, which is how long I've been playing. Well, I've been playing since the alpha, but I've been playing long enough that I should have had him, but I just got him last week. He was the last commander I finally got, and very valuable commander. His trait increases the turret traverse and the reload speed. Two very nice things. Now, we talked about it earlier. The brawler kind of build mentality of this Ciliax build, that's going to really help out with that. We already have the main, or the perk on tier 1 of Cunningham, or I'm sorry, Ciliax, that increases the reload, or decreases the reload. This one's cutting into that further. And then we have the perk on line 2 that improves the turret traverse. This increases that even further. So we're kind of highlighting two aspects of our main build that we've achieved through Ciliax's perks that he has available. And we're just accentuating that further. And you can see I only have him up to level 8, so I don't have the greatest read on this, but so far it seems to be pretty effective. And Madden, by the way, is someone that I'm planning on experimenting with inspirations for certain nations of all ship classes, so cruisers, destroyers, and battleships. You can always consider him. I think he's one of the stronger inspirations in the game, and one that I'm planning on maxing very soon. So those are the two I currently use. Here's some other ideas, though, to consider when you're putting together your Ciliax build. So the first two are options to buff the offensive output of this build. Number one, Jojo for France. He increases the AP penetration of your battleship. Now, this is an extremely strong perk, and you can definitely look at this one, or inspiration, I'm sorry. You can look at this one for all your battleship builds once you get him unlocked if you don't already. But in terms of battleship, the longer your shot goes, the more likely you're going to have penetration issues. So, if you're just strictly firing close range the entire game, not as valuable. But again, with the German battleships, at least the way I play them, you're going to have to expect to get into some longer range engagements early on. And frankly, until you get pretty close range, you can always have penetration issues. So how this one works, it reduces the armor resistance essentially to the shot going in. It doesn't create more overpens. I get a lot of questions about that, and I have verified with Wargaming that increasing your AP penetration does not increase the likelihood of overpenetrations. Two separate different formulas. But yeah, I think Jojo's a very strong consideration. I actually do use him on my von Hipper build for the German battleships, which I use von Hipper on more ships than I actually use Ciliax on. So that'll give you an idea on how valuable I think that is. Next up, as an inspiration, von Hipper himself. Now, this is one that I think most Ciliax players probably have on there, at least the majority. Increases the secondary range, and again, the secondary batteries are very strong on the German battleships, and it's one of their few areas that their ships are the best at. But again, for me, I had this on here up until about last week or so when I started fiddling with his build in preparation to making this video, and I just decided I'm going to run it without any focus on the secondaries. No mods, no perks, no inspirations, and I haven't really missed it, to be honest with you. The secondaries should be considered a bonus, in my opinion. The more resources in terms of commanders or modules that you put into the secondaries, you're really detracting from your ship's overall performance. Again, in my opinion, and I do want to have plenty of feedback from you guys So you can let me know what you think about secondary builds below. But Von Hipper as an inspiration is a good way to invest some into the secondaries without putting too much in terms of overall resources. The inspirations are kind of the weakest influence on the ship's build, so their relative importance is low. And if you want to just boost the secondaries a little bit and kind of accentuate that strength of the German battleship line in a minor way, that's a good way to do it. The next two commanders, I'll talk about them kind of in conjunction with each other. A strong build here would be Takagi and Jellicoe together, both as inspirations. One increases the duration of the repair party consumable, the other increases the health recovered during that. So if you use those in conjunction with each other, and you're going to have 4 or 5 heals that are already boosted with the build dramatically, that build can make you about as survivable as you really can get. And I've talked to very good players whose opinion I respect that kind of have suggested the strength of those two being used in conjunction with each other. If you want to just use one or the other, I believe I looked at it for a couple minutes one night, and I think per level, their influence on your ship is going to be roughly the same. So you can pick one or the other. If I'm mistaken about that, let me know in the comments. But the German battleship line is kind of the most susceptible line of battleships in the game to put on a really solid durability build. So you could use Takagi and or Jellicoe to help achieve that goal. Next up's another pair we'll talk about, Shear/Lee. They're both helping along the damage con cycle, which I think is the main strength of it. Shear affects the fire chance, whereas Lee cuts down the duration of the floods. I think Shear is more valuable as an inspiration in my opinion, but you can make a case for Lee on the German battleships because you might be slightly more likely to get torped just due to the fact that you're going to be performing at shorter ranges than some of the other battleships, which are designed more for long range play. So again, if you want to use either of these guys, the damage con cycle, in my opinion at least, is the highlight, but then you do get a bonus of reducing the effectiveness of the fire or flood against you, and I would pick fire personally if you're going to pick one or the other. Next up we have our boy George Dewey, who in the 1890s was the equivalent of a rock star. He increases the torpedo visibility range, and even though we boosted that earlier, getting an extra boost from George Dewey inspiring Ciliax isn't a bad route to go. Anything you can do to cut down on the chances of getting torped is obviously going to be beneficial for all battleships. And finally we do have Hyde. Hyde was one of the Halloween commanders. He was actually available in a mini campaign, so a lot of people probably have him. You can see I have him relatively low level here. Haven't gotten a chance to use him either as an inspiration or a main commander yet, but he increases your ship's HP by a percentage base, which for battleships is going to be more effective than Sims's inspiration or trait, which increases it by a set amount of HP per level. So Hyde, very interesting. Again, you could consider him strongly for all battleships, and I think he'd do alright with that. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. My main goal with these commander builds is to give you ideas to think about, and then I like to get a lot of feedback from you guys, hopefully in the comments. That helps me inform my thinking, and I think a lot of the viewers like to read through everyone else's ideas too, and kind of see what works for them and what doesn't. So let me know what you think about anything we've covered in this video. How do you have Ciliax set up? Do you like to run Von Hipper or Ciliax as your main battleship commander? And whatever else might be on your mind. And let me know who you would like to see as the next commander that we cover a build guide in. I'd like to kind of start getting some feedback from you guys on that, and I can kind of go from there now that I actually have all the commanders. So that's going to be it though. If you did like the video, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, you should consider subscribing. There's a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. Love to hear from you guys, and we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.